Ever wondered what it would be like to stare into the eyes of someone who changed the world? Someone you've only read about in textbooks? Believe it or not, many legendary figures from centuries past were captured on camera. These aren't oil paintings or marble busts. These are real photographs, raw and unfiltered, of icons whose lives shaped the course of history. From presidents and poets to revolutionaries and scientists, they lived during the fascinating overlap of old world traditions and the rise of photography. This was a time when capturing an image meant freezing a moment of legacy, turning flesh and blood heroes into something almost mythic. And thanks to digital restoration and archival access, we now see their faces more clearly than ever, complete with every wrinkle, stare, and shadow that history forgot to mention. In this episode of Past Paradise, we delve into the incredible stories behind the first generation of photographed legends, including Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Marie Curie, and even Sitting Bull. You'll see how photography didn't just preserve their memory, it shaped it. So get ready to meet the past in a way you've never seen before. George Washington. George Washington, the first president of the United States and a pivotal figure in American history, lived in the 18th century before the invention of photography. Washington, born in 1732 and died in 1799, was instead immortalized by sculptures, engravings, and paintings by artists such as Charles Willson Peale and Gilbert Stuart. Despite being iconic, these pieces of art are interpretations rather than accurate photographic documentation, depending on artistic talent to convey Washington's image, character, and significance as a national icon. Due to the absence of photographs, viewers now must rely on these creative depictions and literary accounts to imagine what Washington looks like. Despite this, Washington's image has become one of the most widely copied in American culture, appearing on monuments, coins, and numerous historical artifacts, thereby solidifying his position as a symbol of the nation's founding principles and leadership. The lack of photographic proof highlights how technological constraints impact historical memory and stands in stark contrast to later historical personalities. Despite the lack of images, Washington's memory is perpetuated through sculptures, early photographic reenactments, and surviving objects related to his life. Washington's visual heritage serves as evidence of the timeless value of creativity and art in conserving history, even before the invention of photography. Abraham Lincoln. With more than 130 known photos taken between 1846 and his assassination in 1865, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is among the first American presidents to have been frequently photographed during his lifetime. These unique photos are important windows into the personality and evolving character of a man who led the country through the Civil War, in addition to serving as historical records. Matthew Brady captured one of the most famous images of Lincoln in 1860, shortly before his presidential nomination. The picture, which depicted Lincoln as tall and a little unsteady, went viral and significantly influenced how the general public perceived him as an influential and moral leader. Notably, photography, which employed the daguerreotype and subsequently the wet plate collodion techniques, required subjects to sit motionless for extended periods and was still a relatively new medium at the time. In a time before the press, Lincoln's tolerance and regular collaboration with photographers revealed a unique understanding of image management. It's fascinating to note that Lincoln's final known photograph, taken in 1865, 2 months before he passed away, shows the profound mental and physical toll the war had taken on him. Lincoln's dejected face and sunken eyes, which represent the weight of leadership, stand in stark contrast to previous images. Historians preserve these images in important archives, scrutinizing them to gain a greater insight into Lincoln's legacy, appearance, and presidency. Even in the absence of audio or video records, these images maintain a potent and genuine connection to one of America's most significant personalities. Ulysses S. Grant. Throughout his military and political career, Ulysses S. Grant, the commanding general who led the Union Army to victory in the American Civil War and went on to become the 18th President of the United States, was photographed extensively. In contrast to many of his peers, Grant was photographed in various formal and informal contexts, providing a rich visual documentation of a person whose stoic manner came to represent tenacity and fortitude. Photographers like Matthew Brady and Alexander Gardner captured Grant's most famous portraits during the Civil War. However, one of the oldest surviving images of him dates back to the Mexican-American War in the late 1840s. He is frequently depicted in these pictures wearing a weathered military uniform, standing calmly and authoritatively next to tents, battle plans, or troops, providing Americans with a reassuring sense of leadership during times of national unrest. Gardner's portrait of Grant at Cold Harbor in 1864 is especially remarkable for capturing a moment of silent tension before one of the deadliest engagements of the war. Grant appeared for more photographs after leaving office during his globetrotting tour in the 1870s and during his final illness in 1885, when he notably completed writing his memoirs while afflicted with throat cancer. Images from this era portray a frail yet unwavering man, dedicated to using his writing to secure his family's financial future. These visual documents, currently housed in organizations such as the Library of Congress, provide the public and historians with direct, uncensored access to Grant's personal development from a humble soldier to a general throughout the war, and ultimately to a thoughtful elder politician who bravely faces death. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was one of the most photographed people of his time, serving as the 26th President of the United States and a symbol of American strength at the turn of the 20th century. Roosevelt enthusiastically embraced photography to influence public opinion, in contrast to many of his predecessors. He frequently used the camera to emphasize his rugged masculinity, spirit of adventure, and political drive. Roosevelt, born in 1858 and growing up as mass photography gained popularity, was chronicled from his sickly childhood to his life-changing experiences as president, vice president, governor, and Rough Rider. His photographs are remarkably diverse, ranging from formal portraits in fitted suits to unscripted action shots taken during safaris in Africa or while hunting in the Badlands. He acknowledged the role that photography played in shaping his public image, and he frequently collaborated with press photographers to secure pictures of himself riding a horse, delivering speeches, or mingling with Americans from the working class. Roosevelt's reputation as an environmentalist is further supported by a particularly famous set of photographs from 1903 that depict him visiting Yellowstone with naturalist John Muir. During his presidency, Roosevelt skillfully harnessed the growth of illustrated newspapers and magazines to cultivate a dynamic, hands-on leadership style. Even after he left office as president, the camera accompanied him on his political campaigns and scientific trips. Roosevelt's final photos, taken before he died in 1919, show an old but still active leader whose impact has already been deeply ingrained in public consciousness and policy. Historians can now clearly understand how ambition, media, and charisma converged to shape a contemporary American president through these images. Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria, who ruled the British Empire from 1837 to 1901, was the first British queen to have her whole adult life chronicled by the developing art of photography. She was one of the most visually documented people of the 19th century, as her reign coincided with the rapid development and creation of photographic technology. Victoria was photographed for the first time in 1844, just a few years after the daguerreotype was created. After being skeptical of the method at first, she eventually came to realize the power of imagery in establishing monarchical authority in a modernizing society. Early images of Victoria often depicted her wearing royal regalia and displaying a calm, respectful demeanor, which reflected the era's demands for imperial poise. Her public persona changed as she grew older, particularly after her husband, Prince Albert, passed away in 1861. The dismal pictures of the heartbroken widow empress, often photographed in black mourning clothes, shaped her lasting image. Her images remained representations of continuity and stability during the height of the British Empire, despite her withdrawal from public life in the 1860s and 1870s. Photography had become widely available by the time of her Diamond Jubilee in 1897, and pictures of the elderly queen were shared all over the world, further solidifying her reputation as an iconic figure. These images, ranging from official portraits to unguarded family moments, not only emphasized the grandeur of the monarchy, but also gave it a personal face. A unique visual narrative of a monarch whose image helped define an entire era of British and global history is now available thanks to Queen Victoria's photographic legacy. Napoleon III. Napoleon III, Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew and Emperor of France from 1852 to 1870, was the first French leader to use photography extensively for both personal branding and statecraft. He came to power at a time when photography was evolving from a novelty to a mass medium of communication, and he understood how it could influence public opinion in a rapidly changing France. Long before he was elected president of the Second Republic in 1848, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte was photographed in exile at the beginning of his political career. The thoughtful, almost sorrowful figure in these early photographs stands in stark contrast to the imperial persona he would eventually adopt. To create official portraits that portrayed him with grandeur, composed power, and a Napoleonic legacy, Napoleon III collaborated extensively with court photographers such as Gustave Le Gray and Desirée after he proclaimed himself emperor in 1852. His carte de visite pictures, which were small albumen prints avidly collected by the public and democratized royal portraiture, made him one of the first heads of state to be widely depicted. By presenting a meticulously manicured image of stability and refinement throughout his reign, these photographs reinforced his role in France's modernization. Pictures of him visiting public works projects or inspecting railroads frequently contrasted with those of them. However, photos of a worn-out, deposed emperor went viral following his defeat and captivity in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, underscoring the significant change in his circumstances. Photographs of Napoleon III in his final years, even in exile in England, are somber reminders of a ruler who utilized photography to craft a contemporary imperial image, only for it to outlive his authority. Frederick Douglass. The renowned author, orator, and abolitionist Frederick Douglass is the most photographed American of the 19th century, with more pictures taken of him than of any other American of the same era. Douglass purposefully utilized photography as a political and cultural weapon against the racist caricatures that dominated American visual culture. Thus, this was no accident. During a period when art and the media frequently dehumanized Black Americans, Douglass demanded their depiction with dignity, intelligence, and fortitude. He sat for more than 160 portraits between the 1840s and the 1890s, his eyes unwaveringly intense, his clothes consistently crisp, and his face never smiling. He frequently published and lectured about photography's power to change public perception, as he believed it was a democratic medium that could enable African Americans to portray themselves accurately and authentically. Douglass was a keen student of photographic philosophy and technology, seeing how an image's permanence might validate humanity and individuality. From a young runaway abolitionist to an elderly statesman, his images changed throughout the years, but they consistently conveyed self-control and rejection of social expectations. Since he gained international recognition during and after the Civil War, several of these photos were extensively shared. In contrast to many public leaders of his era, Douglass eschewed legendary stylization in favor of presenting himself as approachable and authoritative through the realism of photography. His photographic legacy today asserts that representation, particularly visual representation, was a kind of liberation and serves as both a visual biography of one of America's greatest thinkers and a founding act of cultural resistance. Chief Sitting Bull. Throughout his life, Chief Sitting Bull, the Hunkpapa Lakota leader most known for his opposition to American government intrusion and his part in General Custer's defeat at Little Bighorn in 1876, was photographed numerous times, leaving behind a powerful visual record of defiance, dignity, and cultural tenacity. Sitting Bull exercised tight control over his portrayal, frequently negotiating the conditions and goals of each session, in contrast to many Native American leaders who were photographed under duress or exploitation. In his later years, after he had surrendered to American soldiers and briefly toured with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, he painted his most well-known portraits, which were created between 1881 and 1890. Sitting Bull asserted his identity in the face of forced assimilation programs by appearing in multiple photos wearing traditional Lakota regalia, which was embellished with eagle feathers, beadwork, and symbolic decorations, even though he spent a large portion of this time in captivity or under government supervision. His unwavering posture and seldom smiles sent a visual message that defied his people's oppression. He was photographed in studios or on reserves by photographers such as David F. Barry, whose work was widely used in government archives, souvenir prints, and newspapers. In contrast to the idealized portrayals frequently produced by white artists, Sitting Bull's pictures conveyed an unadulterated humanity and silent fortitude. In an era when the indigenous people were often denied exposure and voice, his images remain among the most potent visual representations of Native American pride, resistance, and sovereignty. Through the lens, Sitting Bull was transformed into a symbol rather than a relic. Otto von Bismarck. One of the first European leaders to deliberately employ photography to create a public persona that represented his political power was Otto von Bismarck, the founder of German unification and the first chancellor of the German Empire. Bismarck, who portrayed power, discipline, and conservative stability in his military uniform or formal diplomatic clothes, sat for scores of pictures during the mid to late 19th century. Bismarck's images, which were featured in newspapers, lithographs, and cabinet cards throughout Europe, became iconic representations of the Prussian-led German state at a time when photography was still developing in terms of accessibility and style. Unlike many leaders who tamed their image for public approval, Bismarck's photographic character was stark and authoritative. The fact that he seldom smiled and frequently turned his head away from the camera helped to solidify his reputation as the so-called Iron Chancellor, a cunning and uncompromising individual. Some of the most iconic photos were taken by Berlin-based studios such as Wilhelm Fechner, who captured him during significant political events, including the Austro-Prussian War, the Franco-Prussian War, and the establishment of the German Empire in 1871. Later, when he retired after being fired by Kaiser Wilhelm II in 1890, Bismarck permitted more introspective images, sometimes sitting with dogs or books, gradually changing his persona from strategist to statesman. However, these later pictures retained his signature look of cautious attention. His career as a photographer offers a unique visual consistency for a man who skillfully used diplomacy and established empires through policy rather than bravery on the battlefield. These pictures, which depict not only a man, but also a theory in uniform and flesh, are still powerful symbols of realpolitik from the 19th century. Woodrow Wilson. Throughout his academic, political, and presidential careers, Woodrow Wilson, the 28th President of the United States and a pivotal player in the early 20th century international diplomacy, was photographed extensively, creating a rich visual record that captures the principles and paradoxes of his leadership. Wilson first gained notoriety as the president of Princeton University and then as the governor of New Jersey. Pictures frequently depicted him in conservative clothes and academic robes, his serene and thoughtful countenance fitting his persona as a scholar-turned-politician. Photography was already a significant aspect of press coverage during his presidency, 1913 to 1921, and Wilson's image was widely used in newspapers, magazines, and propaganda posters, particularly during World War I. During the Treaty of Versailles negotiations, iconic photos show him strolling through the streets of Paris, inspecting troops, and delivering speeches to Congress. Because of his advocacy for the League of Nations, his portrait became a symbol of democratic idealism abroad and progressive reform at home. But after suffering a crippling stroke in 1919, his deteriorating health was carefully controlled in the public view, and during his last year in government, very few pictures were made public. Subsequent photographs portray Wilson as a frail individual using a wheelchair, often cropped tightly to conceal disease symptoms and shrouded in shadows. These last pictures, despite their rarity, illustrate the physical toll of idealism in the face of political resistance and global turmoil. Wilson's photographic legacy today reveals how presidential image-making evolved in a media-driven era when images served both as tools of influence and documentation, showing his nuanced blend of political vulnerability, moral conviction, and intellectual gravitas. Framed resolve. During World War II, Winston Churchill, the steadfast Prime Minister of Britain, recognized the potential of photography as a powerful political tool and a representation of national identity. Churchill was persistently photographed from the early 1900s when he was a young war correspondent and cabinet minister to his last years as an aged statesman who won the Nobel Prize. Consequently, he became one of the most widely photographed leaders of the 20th century. His leadership during the war is inextricably linked to his photographic legacy. Famous pictures of him in moments of intense focus, resolve, and defiance helped to boost public spirits during Britain's lowest points. Yusuf Karsh, a Canadian photographer, took what is arguably the most well-known image of Churchill in 1941, just after he daringly took the cigar out of his mouth to elicit a more authoritative look. Churchill's clenched jaw and steely stare in the final photo became a symbol of Allied resistance and a representation of Britain's wartime fortitude. During the war, Churchill frequently appeared alongside Roosevelt, Stalin, and other leaders, thereby solidifying Britain's pivotal position in shaping post-war geopolitics. However, his human side was also recorded by photography, whether he was sitting next to his wife Clementine, painting landscapes, or using a signature cane and hat while strolling. Photographers increasingly captured him in repose in his final years, revealing a life marked by heartbreaking losses and incredible highs. Churchill understood that images could create myth just as well as words in the media age. His images are still preserved today as timeless representations of leadership under duress, not just in historical documents and museums, but also in the public psyche. Charles Dickens. The renowned Victorian novelist Charles Dickens, whose books eloquently captured the socio-economic realities of 19th century England, was one of the first authors whose image was extensively circulated via photography, contributing to the development of his public persona in previously unheard-of ways. Dickens was born in 1812, and throughout his lifetime, portraiture became more widely available due to the development of early photographic techniques, such as the calotype and daguerreotype. Photography provided the public with a remarkably realistic portrayal of the author, thereby boosting his fame, despite earlier pictures and illustrations already being in circulation. Dickens was photographed in both formal and informal situations by photographers such as Oscar Raylander and George Herbert Watkins during one of the most famous photo sessions in the 1950s and 1960s. His distinctive wide eyes and bushy beard are frequently depicted in these images, which show a man of passionate emotion and the depth of empathy and societal critique that defined his writing. In addition to official portraits, Dickens was frequently photographed at theatrical productions and public readings, which further solidified his status as a performer, social reformer, and writer. Newspapers, booklets, and illustrated editions of his writings extensively reproduced his photographs, contributing to his worldwide renown. Dickens recognized the value of his visual portrayal during a time when media and industrialization were coexisting with the emergence of the celebrity cult. His images now function as historical records that enhance his literary legacy by providing a unique window into the real-life presence of a man whose tales have endured for generations. Leo Tolstoy. One of the most photographed authors of the 19th century was the imposing Russian novelist and philosopher Leo Tolstoy, whose works, including Anna Karenina and War and Peace, had a profound influence on international literature. Tolstoy lived amid the rapid development of photography in Russia and Europe, and his image was preserved from his early years into his senior years, offering a rare visual biography of a man whose changing appearance and views reflected significant social and personal changes. As a member of the Russian nobility, Tolstoy is depicted in early portraits as a sophisticated, aristocratic man with a thick beard and a contemplative look. The images represent a rugged, weathered individual, often barefoot or dressed in peasant attire, signifying his rejection of wealth and aristocratic privilege as he grew older and adopted his well-known austere lifestyle. Photographers such as Sergei Levitsky widely disseminated these photographs both domestically and internationally, including them in books, newspapers, and exhibition catalogs. Numerous images of Tolstoy in candid, reflective stances on his family's estate, Yasnaya Polyana, or interacting with peasants, highlight his strong bond with the ordinary people. Tolstoy recognized the potential of photography to personalize and convey ideas beyond words. Similar to his textual work, his latter images depict a calm yet impassioned figure struggling with spiritual issues and societal reform. Today, Tolstoy's photographic legacy is just as significant as his literary accomplishments, as these images provide historians and fans with a clear visual link to a multifaceted person who combined activism, philosophy, and artistic expression. Mark Twain. In addition to being one of America's most adored writers and humorists, Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens, was also one of the most photographed literary personalities of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Twain adopted photography as a means of connecting with his large audience and as a self-promotion when it became more widely available and popular. His many portraits, which ranged from official studio work to unscripted candid photos, captured the unique character of beloved films like Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Frequently spotted wearing his signature white suit, Twain's expressive eyes and bushy mustache seemed to beckon the audience into his realm of social commentary and comedy. Some of Twain's most famous photographs were captured by photographers Napoleon III and William H. Rao, who highlighted both his profound intelligence and his warm sense of humor. Twain frequently used photography to promote his lectures and book tours, as he was well aware of how visuals influenced public perception. Numerous photos of him in casual settings, such as writing, laughing, or enjoying a cigar, offer a glimpse of his complex personality that extends beyond the printed word. Twain's visage became one of the most identifiable of his time due to the extensive use of his images in newspapers, postcards, and advertising materials. These pictures now serve as a reminder of Twain's lasting influence on culture, adding a visual element to the humor, insight, and humanity present in all of his writing. Walt Whitman. One of the most significant poets in America and a pioneer of free poetry, Walt Whitman lived during a time when photography was undergoing considerable change, and he was among the first American authors to be widely photographed. Whitman was born in 1819, and his life was influenced by the development of early photographic methods such as the daguerreotype and subsequently albumen prints, which opened up new avenues for the public to see his work. Photographs of Whitman taken in the mid to late 19th century show a man whose rough features, unruly beard, casual attire, and piercing gaze challenged Victorian notions of the poet as a sophisticated and aloof figure. Instead, by highlighting accessibility and a connection to the average person, these pictures mirrored his democratic and humanistic values. Notably, images captured during and after the Civil War depict Whitman as a sympathetic nurse and spectator, dressed and frequently encircled by soldiers. These images echoed Whitman's poetic themes of suffering, democracy, and solidarity. Whitman was one of the few poets whose face was as well known as his poetry, thanks to photographers like Matthew Brady and others who captured him in both candid and studio portraiture. His notoriety grew both during and after his life as a result of his pictures appearing in periodicals and on book covers. Whitman's photographic legacy endures today as a vital complement to his writing, capturing the essence of a poet who sought to convey the full range of human experience through both words and images. Oscar Wilde. The late 19th century Irish playwright, poet, and wit Oscar Wilde was a master of image and self-presentation, and his photographic legacy was a crucial component of his public persona. To strengthen his reputation as a dapper and cultural provocateur, Wilde adopted photography, which at the time was evolving from stiff, formal portraiture to more expressive and artistic forms. Photographs by renowned photographers such as Napoleon III and Frederick Douglass frequently feature Wilde in opulent clothing, including velvet jackets, silk cravats, and meticulously combed hair, thereby emphasizing his aesthetic philosophy and defiance of Victorian conventions. His expressive eyes and cheeky smile convey the wit and sarcasm for which he was known in these photos. In addition, Wilde posed for more personal and introspective images, which showed a nuanced man behind the dramatic facade. The fact that photography was restricted and tightly controlled during his trial and imprisonment in 1895 added to the mystery surrounding his later life and death. Few photos survive after his release, but those that do show a much more serious and fragile Wilde, in stark contrast to his earlier flamboyance. Together, these pictures show the ascent and terrible decline of a man who was as skilled with visual art as he was with words. To comprehend how Wilde created not only literary works, but also a timeless image of beauty, rebellion, and tragedy that continues to captivate audiences worldwide, one must consult his photographic archive. Victor Hugo. One of the first great writers to have his image extensively photographed and circulated was Victor Hugo, the great French author and political activist of the 19th century, who lived through the invention and ascent of photography. Hugo, born in 1802, witnessed the invention of photography methods such as the daguerreotype. By the mid-1800s, his fame necessitated that photographers attempt to capture his image in the rapidly expanding visual medium. The seriousness of a man steeped in political and social turmoil is conveyed by his photographs, which frequently feature a severe, concentrated figure with deep-set eyes and a flowing beard. Hugo was not only a literary legend, but also a staunch advocate for republicanism, the abolition of the death penalty, and social justice. Hugo frequently utilized his images to further these causes, further solidifying his reputation as an ally of the downtrodden. Photographers caught Hugo in more casual, contemplative positions during his years of exile on the island of Guernsey, portraying a man who was both alone and determined. In addition to his literary works, such as Les Miserables and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he gained international recognition for his photographs that were published in books, pamphlets, and newspapers. Victor Hugo saw the potential of photography as a medium for cultural preservation and political influence. In addition to his lasting literary and humanitarian accomplishments, his photographic portraits remain critical historical documents that offer insight into a visionary whose words and image profoundly influenced France and other countries in the 19th century. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Early photography captured the likenesses of prominent 19th century writers, such as the eminent Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky, who was known for delving deeply into existential issues and human psychology. Dostoevsky was born in 1821, and his life coincided with the development of portrait photography, providing a robust visual documentation of a man whose tumultuous experiences, including poverty, jail, and epilepsy, had a profound impact on his writings, such as Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov. His images frequently depict a somber, serious man with a thick beard and piercing eyes, his visage etched with the struggles and existential angst that pervade his prose. The psychological complexity that made Dostoevsky a literary pioneer is captured in his portrayals, which, in contrast to many of his contemporaries, rarely communicate ease or comfort. Russian photographers, such as Andrei Denis, took some of the earliest photographs of Dostoevsky. These are frequently conventional studio photos that nevertheless capture the author's restless nature. As he grew more well-known and financially secure in his latter years, his photographs evolved, but never lost their unadulterated emotional impact. Books, literary magazines, and cultural publications published these depictions, solidifying his reputation as a troubled genius. These days, Dostoevsky's photographic legacy enhances his writing by offering a chilling glimpse into the man behind the existential stories that continue to captivate readers worldwide. Ralph Waldo Emerson. During the early stages of photography's development, Ralph Waldo Emerson, the founder of American Transcendentalism and a significant essayist and philosopher of the 19th century, became one of the first thinkers to be widely known and visually documented through the new medium. Born in 1803, Emerson gained prominence as a philosopher and lecturer concurrently with the widespread adoption of daguerreotypes and the subsequent development of photography methods. These innovations captured his image in a way that no other philosopher had before him. Photographs, primarily from the 1850s and 1860s, portray Emerson as a dignified man with a long beard and a thoughtful stare. He is frequently seated or photographed in natural environments, reflecting his philosophical emphasis on individuality and the natural world. In addition to being used to go with his published pieces, these portraits also circulated among his expanding fan base, disseminating his ideas and persona across Europe and America. Many of Emerson's portraits, in contrast to the more formal and stiff photographs that were popular at the time, exude warmth and openness, which reflects his faith in one's intuition and connection to nature. Photographers such as Southworth and Hawes captured him with extraordinary nuance and clarity, emphasizing his composed authority and intelligent face. By giving a face to the principles that shaped American literature, philosophy, and culture long into the contemporary period, Emerson's photographic legacy provides a distinctive visual accompaniment to his writings on transcendence and self-reliance. William Tecumseh Sherman. One of the most well-known Union generals of the American Civil War, William Tecumseh Sherman is renowned for both his military tactics and the extensive photography that accompanied his public career. Born in 1820, Sherman witnessed the explosive growth of photography, and countless portraits and combat photos capture his influence on American history. Photographers like Matthew Brady and Alexander Gardner, who were pioneers in war photography, captured Sherman alongside troops, weapons, and the aftermath of battles, providing a vivid visual context for his military tactics and leadership style. Sherman's photographic legacy includes both studio sittings and images related to his famous campaigns, such as the Atlanta campaign and his infamous March to the Sea, in contrast to many generals whose images were restricted to formal portraits. His photos frequently depict Sherman as a calm, stern man, his trademark beard and stovepipe hat symbolizing Union determination. The public's opinion of Sherman as a brutal strategist and a resolute commander dedicated to Union triumph was shaped by the extensive distribution of these photos in newspapers, war diaries, and post-war memoirs. After the war, photographers continued to document Sherman in his roles as a military commander and instructor, often highlighting his authority and dignity. His photographic legacy, which captures the complexities of leadership, conflict, and the development of the United States, is still essential to comprehending not only the man, but also the visual history of the Civil War era. Apache Chief. One of the most photographed Native Americans of the late 19th century is Geronimo, the well-known Apache chief and medicine man. His photographs document a time of cultural survival, resistance, and incarceration. Born in 1829, Geronimo witnessed decades of fighting as American expansion encroached on Apache territory throughout the Southwest. His images, mostly taken after his ultimate surrender in 1886, reveal a man whose ferocious exterior concealed a multifaceted personality as a warrior, spiritual guide, and embodiment of indigenous tenacity. Geronimo's pictures frequently convey a direct, passionate glance that conveys dignity and an unwavering spirit despite his forced confinement, in contrast to many Native Americans who were portrayed in contrived or romanticized settings. Photographers took numerous photographs of Geronimo on reservations and during Buffalo Bill's Wild West performances. These photographs were widely distributed in newspapers, postcards, and ethnographic collections, contributing to the development of his mythology among Native groups and the general American public. These images frequently highlighted the cultural tensions of the time by contrasting traditional Apache clothing with the brutal realities of incarceration. In contrast to his lifelong defiance of American authority, Geronimo was willing to be photographed, demonstrating a calculated use of iconography to assert identity in the face of relocation. His photographic legacy now provides a visual connection to the man who created the legend of the last great Apache warrior, serving as a potent reminder of the hardships and tenacity of indigenous peoples during a critical juncture in American history. Buffalo Bill Cody. William Frederick Buffalo Bill Cody, a famous figure of the American frontier, used photography to create and preserve the Wild West mythology, making him one of the most photographed individuals of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Cody was born in 1846, at a time when photography emerged as a powerful medium for celebrity culture and public communication. His reputation as the archetypal frontiersman and showman was solidified by his meticulously staged photographs, which often featured him wearing buckskins, feathered war bonnets, or cowboy hats. From rehearsed battle reenactments to unscripted photos taken during his well-known traveling performances, Buffalo Bill's Wild West, photographers such as Charles Roscoe Savage and others documented him in various dramatic scenarios. These images were widely published in newspapers, journals, postcards, and advertising materials, which contributed to Cody's global recognition and the idealized portrayal of the American West. Although the work also reinforced some preconceptions, Buffalo Bill's use of photography to portray himself as a bridge between Native American cultures and white audiences went beyond simple amusement. He frequently took pictures of indigenous performers in his act alongside himself. His photography legacy demonstrates a guy skilled at influencing public opinion through media, fusing performance and reality to produce timeless legends. Buffalo Bill's pictures remain recognizable visual relics of frontier mythology today, capturing a complex period of American amusement, expansion, and cross-cultural interaction. Tomas Garrigue Masaryk. During a pivotal period in Central European history, Tomas Garrigue Masaryk, the philosopher-statesman and the first president of Czechoslovakia, was frequently photographed. Masaryk was born in 1850, and when modern photography gained popularity, he used it as a vital tool to convey his dedication to national independence, democratic principles, and intellectual rigor. Both his philosophical training and his practical leadership during the turbulent years of World War I and the establishment of Czechoslovakia in 1918 are reflected in his photographs, which frequently showed a dignified, learned man with a noticeable beard and reflective eyes. In addition to official state photographs, photographers documented Masaryk during speeches, foreign diplomatic gatherings, and private moments, providing a nuanced picture of a leader genuinely interested in his people's aspirations. The extensive distribution of his photos in newspapers, political pamphlets, and official documents cemented his reputation as the President Liberator, who supported democracy, human rights, and national self-determination. Masaryk's photographic presence promoted unity among diverse ethnic groups and played a significant role in shaping the visual character of the newly formed republic. His images now serve as a historical record of a visionary leader whose impact on Czech and Slavic political culture endures, representing the hopes and dreams of a country forged in the crucible of early 20th century turmoil. Nikola Tesla. One of the most photographed pioneers of the late 19th and early 20th centuries is Nikola Tesla, the great Serbian-American electrical engineer and inventor. His photographs capture his aura of mystery and genius. Tesla was born in 1856, and his career spanned the rise of photography as a popular medium, allowing his image to be widely published in both the scientific and popular press. Images that visually tell the story of Tesla's revolutionary work on alternating current, AC, electricity, wireless communication, and futuristic technologies range from formal studio portraits to candid shots in his laboratory, where he is frequently seen surrounded by coils, generators, and early electrical devices. Photographers like Napoleon III contributed to the popularization of Tesla's image, characterized by his sharp features, focused stare, and precise attire, which merged the personas of a visionary thinker and a serious scientist. Publications of his images in periodicals, newspapers, and scientific journals further cemented Tesla's reputation as a trailblazing innovator and a cultural hero. These pictures contributed to the preservation of the heritage of a man whose innovations transformed the contemporary world, despite his final financial difficulties and relative obscurity later in life. By fusing the fields of science and mystery and offering a glimpse into the life of a man whose ideas were frequently ahead of his time, Tesla's picture archive still captivates people today. His image is ingrained in the collective memory of creativity. Thomas Edison. One of the most successful inventors in history, Thomas Edison lived at a time when photography was becoming a vital tool for recording both individual accomplishments and scientific advancement. Thomas Edison, born in 1847, worked during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when photography was rapidly evolving from formal portraits to dynamic pictures that captured the essence of industry and invention. Edison left behind a vast photographic record, which includes official studio photographs, images of his Menlo Park and West Orange laboratories, and unscripted portraits showcasing his inventions, such as the phonograph and the incandescent light bulb. Photographers like George C. Cox captured Edison's distinctive profile, which often featured spectacles, a furrowed brow, and a contemplative demeanor, thereby solidifying his reputation as the archetypal American innovator. In addition to taking personal portraits, pictures captured the busy atmosphere of his workshops, showcasing early electrical equipment and teams of assistants, demonstrating the cooperative nature of innovation. These photos, extensively featured in newspapers, scholarly publications, and advertising materials, significantly shaped public perceptions of invention as a driving force for advancement. Edison, who used photography to popularize his work and sway both investors and the general public, recognized the power of the visual image. These images, which describe the life and times of a man whose innovations revolutionized daily life, are still essential historical documents today, shedding light on the connection between contemporary history's scientific advancements and visual documentation. Marie Curie. The revolutionary physicist and chemist Marie Curie, who is best known for her groundbreaking studies on radioactivity, lived during a time when photography was emerging as a vital medium for both recording popular figures and scientific advancements. Curie was born in 1867, and her photographic record documents both her intellectual rigor and the inner tenacity that shaped her career in the face of the obstacles faced by women in science in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Photographs of Curie often depict her in her lab at the Radium Institute or the University of Paris, surrounded by glowing radium samples, glassware, and scientific equipment, underscoring her persistent dedication to research despite the health hazards she encountered. A calm, focused woman whose keen look and poised manner reflected her stature as the first woman to win a Nobel Prize and the only person to earn Nobels in 2 scientific categories, is depicted in studio sittings and portraits by photographers such as Paul Nader. Books, newspapers, and scientific publications extensively featured her photographs, spreading awareness of her work and motivating upcoming scientific generations. In contrast to many of her peers, Curie's images often highlight her dual roles as a mother and a researcher, showcasing the human side of a woman who successfully reconciled her revolutionary work with her family life. Her photographic legacy endures today as a poignant illustration of tenacity and intelligence, graphically chronicling the life of a scientist whose discoveries revolutionized contemporary chemistry and physics. Charles Darwin. The great British biologist Charles Darwin, whose theory of evolution revolutionized biology, lived during the early years of photography, leaving behind a small but impactful photographic legacy alongside his revolutionary scientific contributions. The taking of several iconic photographs marked the later years of Darwin's life. However, Darwin penned his most renowned work, On the Origin of Species, 1859, before the widespread adoption of photographic portraiture. Darwin's birth year was 1809. With his distinctive long white beard and penetrating eyes that appeared to capture the depth of his scientific reflection, Darwin is portrayed in these images as a wise, venerable man. The most famous photos were taken by photographers such as Moll and Polyblanc, who frequently depicted Darwin in formal clothing, but with a relaxed, reflective expression rather than a rigid Victorian attitude. His photographs became widely used in academic circles and scientific journals, humanizing a person whose theories sparked debate and transformed our knowledge of life on Earth. Darwin's position within the Victorian scientific community is evident in the photographs he took of himself, as well as of his family and colleagues. Although there are fewer of these portraits compared to those of later luminaries, they remain historically significant because they represent some of the earliest visual documentation of a scientist who transformed people's self-perception. Darwin's photographic legacy remains a testament to the intersection of science and society today, providing a visual representation of the evolutionary theory that underlies contemporary biology. Louis Pasteur. The late 19th century saw the widespread use of photography to document the groundbreaking French chemist and microbiologist Louis Pasteur, whose discoveries transformed public health and medicine. His visual impact is as significant as his scientific accomplishments. Pasteur was born in 1822, and his career coincided with the rise in popularity and accessibility of photography, which made it possible to take both formal studio pictures and unscripted images in his laboratory setting. Pasteur's distinctive beard and solemn, determined face are frequently depicted in these images, signifying his dedication to learning more about the fight against illnesses such as anthrax and rabies. Photographs captured in his lab depict the inventor utilizing scientific equipment, showcasing his pragmatic approach to research and experimentation. Photographers such as Nader, who captured many of the leading thinkers of the time, contributed to the spread of Pasteur's image throughout Europe. His image as a devoted and reliable scientist whose work saved countless lives was further solidified when his portraits were published in scientific journals, media outlets, and public health campaigns. Pasteur was one of the first scientists to recognize the value of visual documentation in promoting scientific understanding and fostering public trust. His photographic legacy endures today as evidence of his discoveries, as well as the expanding use of photography to document the advancements in contemporary science and medicine. Sigmund Freud. In addition to his groundbreaking contributions to psychology, the Austrian neurologist and father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud, left behind a rich visual legacy from his extensive photography in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Freud was born in 1856, at a time when photography was evolving from a formal art form to a means of recording scientific advancement and intellectual activity. With his characteristic beard and pince-nez glasses, he frequently appears in his photographs as a solemn, serious man who exudes authority and introspection. From official studio pictures to candid shots in his consulting room, photographers documented Freud in a variety of contexts, exposing the public and private selves of the man who developed the groundbreaking theories of the unconscious mind, repression, and dream interpretation. The public perception of Freud and his somewhat contentious theories was shaped by the extensive distribution of these images in books, newspapers, and medical journals. Images of Freud with his family and co-workers are also part of his photographic legacy, highlighting his leadership and mentoring role in the nascent psychoanalytic movement. Crucially, Freud carefully selected his visual depiction because he understood how images may affect perception. In addition to being historical records, Freud's images are now timeless representations of the investigation of human consciousness, connecting the domains of early 20th century science, culture, and individual identity. Alexander Graham Bell. The Scottish inventor Alexander Graham Bell, most famous for inventing the telephone, lived during the revolutionary period of photography and utilized it to record and publicize his groundbreaking contributions to communication technology. Bell, born in 1847, worked during a time when photography was rapidly developing, allowing him to create vibrant and vivid pictures that showcased both his creative genius and personal life. The image of a serious scientist and businessman from the Victorian era is reflected in his photographs, which typically show a calm and contemplative individual wearing formal attire and sporting a beard. With early telephone prototypes, sound equipment, and experimental devices all around him, Bell was regularly photographed in his lab and workshop, graphically documenting the evolution of technologies that would forever alter human communication. Photographers like Julius Saxe and others helped raise awareness of Bell's innovation worldwide by documenting his public exhibitions and demonstrations. The commercialization of the telephone and his increasing notoriety were aided by the appearance of his photographs in newspapers, scientific publications, and promotional materials. Bell's photographic legacy encompasses not only his technical achievements, but also group shots with collaborators and family photographs, highlighting the collaborative nature of his work. The images of a man whose voice genuinely resonated into the future are preserved by Bell's photographs, which today serve as significant historical artifacts that show the nexus of invention, media, and contemporary communication. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman, the renowned abolitionist and conductor of the Underground Railroad, is one of the most recognizable individuals in American history. Although photography was developed during her lifetime, there are surprisingly few authentic photos of Tubman, which has only increased the mystery surrounding her courageous deeds. Tubman, who was born about 1822, spent her busiest years guiding runaway slaves to freedom before the widespread use of photography in the U.S. Nonetheless, some later life photographs of Tubman offer unique and priceless insights into a woman whose bravery, fortitude, and leadership transformed innumerable lives. Usually clad in a shawl or hat, these images portray Tubman as a dignified and resolute individual whose eyes exude a deep fortitude developed through years of adversity and unrelenting advocacy. Some photographers, such as H.C. Foster, ensured that Tubman's face became a symbol of justice and freedom. Foster and others selected some of the few photographs that appeared in abolitionist periodicals, Civil War remembrances, and later historical retrospectives. Despite the scarcity of images, her visual legacy has been widely replicated in paintings, sculptures, and contemporary media. Despite its limitations, Tubman's photographic record effectively enhances the wealth of oral histories and written chronicles of her life by capturing the image of a courageous woman whose deeds epitomized the fight for freedom and human dignity during one of the darkest periods in American history. Helen Keller. A brilliant American author, activist, and lecturer, Helen Keller is renowned for her inspirational journey and her remarkable life story of overcoming blindness and deafness. Keller was born in 1880, and during that time, photography had emerged as a significant and accessible tool for documenting influential individuals and sharing their narratives. Images of Keller often depict her with her loyal instructor, Anne Sullivan, highlighting their close bond and innovative teaching methods. While subsequent shots depict Keller's calm and articulate demeanor as an advocate for social reform and those with disabilities, early photographs show her in her early years. Because Keller's photos were regularly featured in books, periodicals, and newspapers, more people became aware of the difficulties faced by people with disabilities, as well as the value of equal rights and education. These images also show the evolution of Keller's public persona, from a helpless youngster emerging from seclusion to a confident and powerful orator. Her photographs frequently highlight poise and tenacity, capturing the attitude of fortitude that characterized her life. As a visual chronicle of one of the most remarkable individuals in disability history and social activism, Keller's photographic legacy continues to influence generations worldwide. It stands as a potent monument to human potential and the power of tenacity. Phineas Taylor Barnum. Around the world, Phineas Taylor Barnum is referred to as P.T., a trailblazing entertainer, businessman, and creator of the renowned Barnum and Bailey Circus. Barnum's life and profession were widely captured on camera during the 1800s. Barnum, born in 1810, understood the potential of visual media to captivate and enthrall audiences. He took advantage of the development of photography technology to market his spectacles, curiosities, and performances. His photographs frequently depict a lively and gregarious man, typically clad in formal 19th century attire, with expressive features and a noticeable mustache that reflected his financial acumen and theatrical flair. Photographers created photos that captivated and amused the public by capturing Barnum not only in studio settings, but also with some of the circus's most well-known attractions, such as Jenny Lind, Tom Thumb, and other sideshow acts. These images were extensively used in newspapers, ads, and posters, further solidifying Barnum's standing as America's top PR guru and tycoon. In addition to his role as a promoter, Barnum's images document 19th century entertainment culture and illustrate how marketing and the media transformed popular entertainment. Barnum's photographic legacy, which captures the nexus of show business, media, and American popular culture during a pivotal period, remains a striking testament to his inventive use of pictures in shaping public spectacle and financial success. Claude Monet. Photography was having an increasing impact on visual culture and artistic expression at the time that Claude Monet's pioneering French Impressionist paintings were being created. These paintings had a profound effect on the art world. Monet, born in 1840, witnessed the advent of photography as both a tool for journalism and an artistic medium. Although his work remained firmly rooted in painting, Monet was able to observe the development of photography. The photographs of Claude Monet, primarily from his later years, offer a unique glimpse into the artist at work in his renowned Giverny gardens. In these photographs, he is depicted surrounded by water lilies, Japanese bridges, and the picturesque natural surroundings that served as inspiration for his artwork. There is no better way to portray the dedication and zeal that drove Monet's creative process than through these photographs, which typically depict him in contemplative poses while holding a palette and brushes in his hands. During that time, photographers took images of Monet in both official and informal settings. These photographs showcased an artist who was committed to preserving fleeting moments of color and light and who had a profound connection to the natural world. The publication of Monet's photographic portraits in art journals, exhibition catalogs, and biographies played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of him as a pivotal figure in the historical development of contemporary art. The photographic archives of Monet's life and work offer invaluable insight into his creative process, despite Monet himself never employing photography as a medium for creative expression. These photographs, which depict the dynamic interaction between traditional art and new technologies in the latter half of the 19th century and the early 20th century, are now displayed alongside his paintings as a supplementary documentation of a revolutionary era. Johannes Brahms. One of the most influential Romantic composers, was featured in numerous photographs taken in the latter half of the 19th century. These photographs served as a visual record to supplement his enduring musical legacy. Brahms was born in 1833, a period when photography was becoming increasingly popular as a method of capturing the likenesses of significant cultural figures such as thinkers, composers, and performers. His photographs, which typically depict him with a thick beard and an intense reflective gaze, are another reflection of the seriousness of his musical trade and the depth of his creative temperament. Photographers chronicled Brahms's intimate links within the flourishing European musical community through the use of official studio shots, as well as unscripted conversations with friends and fellow musicians such as Clara Schumann and Joseph Joachim. These photographs, which were published in concert programs, music magazines, and early recordings, played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of Brahms as a composer and a profoundly thoughtful artist. Brahms's photographic legacy provides an insight into the cultural milieu of the 19th century music by bridging the gap between the private process of composition and the public life of performance and reception. This enables a deeper understanding of their relationship. The composer of some of the most well-known chamber pieces, concertos, and symphonies in the classical repertoire is immortalized by his imagery, which continues to be recognized as a symbol of Romantic music even in modern times. Harriet Beecher Stowe. As photography advanced, Harriet Beecher Stowe, the American novelist whose book, Uncle Tom's Cabin, sparked anti-slavery sentiment in the 19th century, was able to safeguard her reputation for posterity. Stowe, born in 1811, rose to prominence as one of the most photographed literary figures of her era. Portraits of her portray her as a respectable and sincere woman, frequently dressed modestly in 19th century clothing and with well-groomed hair, which reflected her position as a cultural and moral influencer. In addition to more casual, relaxed photos that demonstrated Stowe's warm personality and the tenacity of her abolitionist beliefs, photographers also took formal studio shots of her. Her reputation as a fervent supporter of social justice and the transformative power of literature was strengthened by the widespread use of her photographs in newspapers, pamphlets, and book illustrations. In addition to her literary notoriety, Stowe's images were published with narratives of her advocacy, talks, and travels, which served to humanize a person who shaped the national dialogue on civil rights and slavery. Together with the literary legacy she left behind, these visual recordings painted a vivid picture of a lady whose contributions influenced American history. Harriet Beecher Stowe's photographic legacy remains a significant example of how art, activism, and social reform intersected in the 19th century. Thanks for stepping into history with us here at Past Paradise. If seeing real faces from the past gives you chills, hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more in-depth dives into iconic figures, vintage Hollywood, and the legends who still shape pop culture. Until next time, stay curious, stay classic.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon